What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Studio Chatter podcast. I know it's been a minute since we have had an episode, but I have a very special guest, and that is none other than my good friend, Minnie Bear. She is an LA-based DJ and producer and performer. How are you, Minnie Bear?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. You had a birthday recently.
I did. Yeah, it was on Sunday. Yeah, just recently. I am a Leo, which surprises a lot of people, I think, because I think I tend to be like a quieter Leo, unless I'm on stage or in certain circumstances. But yeah, man, I love Leo season. I want to celebrate my birthday all month long.
Yeah, and you have a birthday during the summer too, so you can probably party, you can have a good time, and
yeah,
of course, I don't know what that feels like because my birthday is in the winter, and it's like 2 days before. It's 2 days before New Year's Day.
Oh, that's that is
December 30th.
That is tricky timing. Yeah, I didn't really like it when I was a kid because, all kids usually get to celebrate, their birthday at school, and everyone like really celebrates you. But in the summer, you're really only seeing your friends, So yep. I think I didn't like it when I was a kid. I do like it now. I actually had a surprise party on my birthday. It was a pool party, and it was actually the first surprise party I've ever had. So it was kind of perfect. Also, it was like 97 that day. So really appreciated just hanging out in the pool, summer vibes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know what it feels like not to be able to have your birthday during the time where you're in school, because my birthday is typically during the holidays. And so people are not in school during the holidays. It's the winter break.
Right.
And so I kind of have some kinship with you there. You've been very busy as of late, and I've wanted to have this interview with you for a while, but you've been so incredibly busy doing gigs all over. How do you balance it all? Because it must be crazy.
Honestly, that's such a great question because I am constantly trying to figure that out. Yeah, I feel really fortunate. It's kind of like very up and down, I will be honest. Tell us about some of the gigs that you've been doing. Yeah. So basically up until last February, I was working for a particular like music production school. And then starting last February, I was actually laid off and was kind of thrown into freelance life. And I had dabbled in like freelance territory like a few years prior to that. But essentially I kind of like split my time between education. So I give private lessons, and I also teach for a nonprofit called Femme House, as well as just like a lot of other like music related gigs. The particular gigs that I had more recently are DJ gigs, and then just like Minnie Bear performer gigs. So I started more seriously DJing last year and have been getting like more bookings this year, which has been really, really nice. But yeah, my more recent gigs, through Femme House, they partnered up with Outfest, which is for those of you who don't know, it's a queer film festival that happens every year in LA. And they partnered with Outfest, and through a big gay party, that Big Frida, I don't know if you're familiar with Big Frida.
Oh, I'm very familiar with Big Frida.
Iconic. Yeah.
I've met Big Frida before in New Orleans, because that's where she's originally from.
Yeah,
so,
totally. Yeah, she is amazing. Anyway, she headlined the show, and I had the honor of being one of the DJs on the lineup. So that was, a recent gig that I did that was really, really exciting. I played LA Pride recently, which was, I think, another like big milestone, I think, in my performing career thus far, on the main stage. I've just like had a few just like Minnie Bear performances. So essentially I have like two different like performance types of performances that I do now. So there's DJing, which is like just totally different, just literally like CDJs, and then I'll throw like my own tracks in there in the mixes, where I'm singing on top of tracks. And then there's Mini Bear Performances, which is more of like synth pop, like triggering things with like Ableton Live. Yeah. And I did like a headline show recently, like a small venue in LA. Yeah. I just like, with performing, it's so interesting because like the past 2 years, obviously with like COVID, performing opportunities slowed like way down. And then I kind of like realized when lockdown started that I really didn't miss it. That I was like kind of great. It wasn't that like I actually love performing. There's like a part of me that I think like I am able to express in a way that I can't really express from just like talking to a person. And I think that's why like people are surprised that I'm a Leo until they see me on stage and they're like, okay, I get it. But I think like I was so burnt out when lockdown started. I think just because, to be real, like the whole like grind of being especially like a local artist in LA, it's just real, like promoters just like really asking for so much but giving so little. And I think that just like the lack of really like true community in LA really just like was starting to wear me down. There was just like so many artists that like, I don't know, I just like felt like weren't genuine, and were like more like social climbers.
Yeah.
And I think with lockdowns,
social climbers in LA, big shock, right?
Right, big shock. I mean, that can happen anywhere, but I think that particularly in LA, where it's just like very competitive type of vibe. And I think, when lockdown started, I think for a lot of people, right, it kind of just like made us reflect, like, oh, wait, capitalism is just like so apparent. What am I actually like doing with my life? And like, what are the things that actually like add meaning to my life, and what are the things that I actually like want to do? And so I think it was like a blessing in disguise to kind of like step back. But now that, things are like kind of opened up a little bit, I really have been like enjoying performing again. And the work that I've been doing with Femme House the past couple of years has just like really been so fulfilling. And as an organization, like they've grown so much also in the past few years, which has led to a lot of amazing opportunities, which has really kind of like funneled into like my artist, I guess like self of like getting all of these amazing like performing opportunities, such as the Outfest gig.
Yeah. So can you tell us about Femme House? Mm-hmm. Because you are the chief educational officer mm-hmm. of Femme House. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the chief education officer. Chief education officer. What a mouthful. So Femme House is basically a nonprofit, a platform that provides educational resources plus other resources to marginalized genders that want to learn the technical side of music making. So that can be music production, and we also just added DJ programming as well. So, in the world of like audio engineering and DJing and music production, obviously it's just like dominated by cis men. Essentially, it's not very gender diverse. And so Femme House is aiming to change that. So as the chief education officer, essentially, I program out the workshops. We have free monthly workshops. I also program out the online courses. And I teach all of the music production related workshops and online courses. So yeah, the online courses have been like, specifically like the one we did recently, the last one that we did, and then last summer were huge, and I think really allowed Femme House to grow the community in such a huge way. But essentially, we partnered up with an organization called She Is the Music, who has a huge community from like literally like all over the world. And yeah, we launched those particular courses called She Is the Producer. And we had over, I want to say like 3,500 people enroll from literally all over the world. I think like 80 plus countries. Yeah, it was just like incredible to see. Our community just keeps growing. And I think that was kind of one of the blessings of things going online during lockdown, is that people, first of all, were like, oh, what do we do now? I have all this time like inside. So I think like live stream courses kind of blew up, but also it allowed us to take our courses, which had, you know, been in person, to online, and obviously grow the community in that way.
I just look at the EDM space and the electronic music space, and it is very, very white male dominated.
Yeah.
Like to a large degree, I think, because of the fact that a lot of the festivals and a lot of the stuff like that are run by a lot of men in LA, and that's kind of the vibe. How do you think that changes?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's several levels to that. Like, to your point, yeah, I think like the gatekeepers are predominantly cis white men. So, you know, obviously when people are, you know, like that, are in those roles, they're going to keep booking cis white men. You know what I mean? Same can go like for the Grammys, right? If like the people voting are predominantly like cis white men, then we're just going to see like white artists essentially be, you know, voted. But yeah, so I think for one, yeah, diversifying who like gatekeepers are, but then also, you know, one of the reasons, for example, like it took me so long to even believe that I was a producer is because that there were very few people doing this that look like me. And I think that really makes a difference. When you have educators that are in these roles that, you know, maybe like look like you, or, you know, are outside of like the norm, like industry norm, then I think that kind of like empowers people to like want to learn. And also, I just think that like creating safe and supportive learning spaces is so important. I think especially when, yeah, it's, you know, in like music production, audio engineering, those worlds, you know, because there are predominantly that space is taken up by like cis white men, it just like, it makes you feel like you can't learn those things. Like I remember taking an audio engineering class in college, and
well, honestly, I would have to say to some extent, it's not even just you don't feel like you can learn. I think in a lot of sense, a lot of women can't learn because, see, the way I look at it is this, okay? And this is not like anti-white or anti-male or anything like that, but if the spaces of power are taken up by a certain demographic of people, then what's going to happen is that there's only so many spaces that can be filled. Okay. It's like, you know, you can't have, the top is not an infinite space where everybody can go. Yeah. Well, the only way that people can get really good at production, at DJing, at whatever, is by getting opportunities to learn. And because look, I'll put it to you this way, okay? When I was growing up, I had producers that I looked up to. I had, you know, Dr. Dre, I had Babyface, I had Teddy Riley, I had the Neptunes, I had people like that. And I was very lucky in that right when I got out of college, I got a management deal. And I was able to learn from people better than me and work under the wing of people better than me. Yeah. Well, a lot of producers who are of marginalized genders, they don't get those opportunities to learn and get better, right? It's like, you know, NHL players play with AHL players to learn and get better. And, you know, if you don't work with people, if you're not getting those opportunities, then you're not going to learn and get better. And so, you know, that's the reason why. Yeah. Now, obviously, you know, there are some phenomenal female producers, okay? And I've interviewed several of them. and obviously you're one of them, but there's a lot of female producers who have been producing for years who are not very good.
Yeah.
And it's not because they don't have the innate talent or innate ability, but they didn't get the opportunities to really learn from the best. They didn't get the opportunities that I got to work under people like Sean Garrett and people like that. They didn't get those opportunities.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a combination of mentoring's everything, and also financial access for sure. Oh, wait, I can't hear you.
Yeah,
there you go. But yeah, that's like one of the reasons also why we created these, like Femme House created these mentorship programs, scholarship programs, particularly for like BIPOC artists, just because, for one, mentoring, especially like one-on-one mentoring, so important.
Oh yeah,
I honestly wish I had that, because I mean, I think where I am now from when I started, I think I would have gotten there so much faster if I had a mentor. But much of like what I learned, honestly, was just like on my own and just being obsessive about learning, about just like gaining knowledge. But also, there is, I think, the access to gear, that is kind of like a financial privilege that, not everyone has, right?
Mm-hmm. And then there is a little bit more of a path now than there was in 20 years ago, because at least people can learn from YouTube.
100%.
At least you have, at least you now have groups like She Knows Tech and Femme House, and groups like that are helping to give young women and young gender nonconforming people the tools to be able to find success and to be able to compete. Right now, now I know this is an old statistic. Well, it's not that old. It's about 2 years old. But according to the group that you had mentioned, I actually read this from She Is the Producer. I think about 2.5% of the placements on the Hot 100 for producers were women. 2.6%.
Yeah, that's so small.
We have a higher percentage of women producers today than ever before, yet the number hasn't moved. And so do we need more female producers, or do we need to start doing right by the ones we have?
I mean, I think both, to be honest. I mean, I will say, like, teaching at a music production school, the demographic was still like a small percentage. So like cis men still were a majority, whereas like other genders a minority, right? So I do think that we do still need to make strides to make those areas more gender diverse, but I think it's kind of goes back to what you were saying about like gatekeeping, right? So I mean, like, as far as, I don't know, like, because I think that there are more producers, but I don't know, are they releasing music? Are they, I don't know, like, are they being given a platform? You know what I mean? So I think I agree with you. Like, are we doing them right? Are we giving them a platform? But also, I do think that, there in general just needs to be more producers.
But do you think that we should be bringing more into a failing system? So bringing more in, like bringing more women into a system that will fail them. It's kind of like this, right? You don't want to have more children if you can't take care of the children you have. What do you think of that analogy? So if I have 5 kids already, and it's like, oh, let's have more kids. Well, you're not taking care of the kids you have. So should we be trying to bring more women into? I mean, to be honest, that's going to fail.
I'm a little confused by that analogy, because I feel like if any person, I just want to think about babies right now, but like, I feel like any person wants to just like make music, regardless of what gender they are, they should be able to do that.
I'm not saying we should discourage them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should discourage them. I'm just saying that when I look at that percentage, I don't think we need more women. We need more women getting placements. We need more women getting opportunities. We need more women getting paid.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's like that binary. Like, I think that there's just a lot of different layers to the reasons behind that statistic.
So you believe that if we have more women, the industry will be compelled to start listening to them and start giving them opportunities, start getting them in the studio with these big artists to make the hits.
Yes, but in addition, we also need marginalized genders to be in those higher up roles that allow, them to get the recognition that they deserve and give them a platform. I just don't,
Do we have that more now than in the 90s? I would presume we probably do.
Kind of, but
in some circles,
yeah, but I would honestly say no.
Not in yours, not in your industry, no. Because like, if you look at the electronic music industry from the 90s, it's more male dominated now than then. I will agree with that. So in your industry, I would say it's gotten worse in a lot of ways. Because like, if you look at electronic music from the 80s and 90s, it was a lot more gay dominated, a lot more Black dominated than it is now. It's a lot more of like white boys and snapbacks. Not that I have a problem with white boys and snapbacks at all. Some of my good friends are white boys and snapbacks, but let's be real about it. I mean, if you look at house music today, it's a lot more white male dominated than it was in the 90s.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
But in the industry as a whole, in the pop, in R&B and hip hop or whatever industry as a whole, I would say that there are more women in power now than there was in the past, especially in pop. So like in the pop and R&B industry, I would say that there are more women in power now than in the past, yet we still don't see women getting placements.
Yeah. I mean, what roles are you specifically referring to?
Well, I'm talking about record executives and A&Rs. So as far as people who can sign talents or at least get producers linked up with artists. And not only that, but artists themselves. If you look at the Hot 100, if you look at the other charts, there are more women represented now than in the 90s, I would presume. I would at least think so. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know. I would like have a better response to that if I knew like offhand who was like what the gender makeup was as regards to like higher ups and like how the industry like works. You know what I mean? I can only really speak to kind of like my own like microcosm of what I've seen in my own life, and how that's like affected how I operate in the world and how that's like affected my, my own confidence in regards to, myself as an artist and like how I produce and how long it took me to be able to like confidently say like, I can do this like myself. And yeah. And also just
that brings me to that actually brings it to a very good question. I am very, very curious on how you got started in this. Like, what is the Mini Bear origin story? How did you go from a little girl watching Saturday morning cartoons to the great performer we see today, the great producer, great DJ we see today?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long arc. I'll start with my college story because I guess like prior up to the point I was like in choir. I was like primarily a singer. When I was in college, I decided to declare my major in music. It was like pretty close between film or music, but I always loved singing. I always loved music. And the school I went to, the programs were pretty limited. So essentially like I majored in something similar to music education, with an emphasis in voice. And so I essentially was an opera singer, learned how to sing opera. And while I was in school, took a few audio engineering classes. But at the time, I feel like just like making music at home wasn't super accessible. This was like, I don't know, I want to say like 2002, 2003, super long time ago. And so, you know, GarageBand was a thing, but it was like, I mean, it's still kind of primitive, to be honest. I actually just taught at a camp where the kids were using GarageBand, and I was like, oh my God.
Nice.
Honestly, I respect, because it makes it so easy now for kids to just like literally just make a song without knowing what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's incredible. But anyways, at the time, GarageBand was even more primitive, and I feel like I just like really couldn't do much with it. And essentially, like, I just would like write songs at a piano, right? And didn't really know how to produce. And until like a few years later, I was living in San Diego, moved to back to LA, which is where I'm from, and started working at the Apple store. And I realized I didn't want to sell computers anymore, because I'm just like not a salesperson. And I was like, wait, what is that cool job where people are teaching people how to use Logic and Final Cut Pro? I want to do that. And so I essentially decided I wanted to become a creative trainer and become Logic certified. And so became Logic certified. And that's how I started using, I guess, my first like pro DAW, if you want to call it that. And started learning how to like produce around that time. But yeah, I think then at some point I like switched over to Ableton, because my partner at the time wanted to go in on a license together, and was like, this was like, I don't know, 2012, when people are using Ableton, but like not, I feel like so many people use Ableton Live now, which I think is incredible. But at the time, until like 2012, it was not a popular DAW. It was like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, Just Blaze kind of helped to make it popular. He was like the first person in like 2010 to kind of make it popular. And then Skrillex also kind of took it and made it popular for the EDM crowd.
Right. But yeah, at the time, 2012, not super popular, but my partner at the time was like, oh my God, these licenses are expensive. Do you want to go in on one with me? Don't tell Ableton, because now like I collaborate with them all the time, and I have my own I have my own license now. Pro tip, never share a license with anyone. Just never know what's going to happen. But anyways, so I kind of like switched over to Live, and around that time I wanted to, you know, perform out and do my first shows. And so I was like, oh, okay, this seems like pretty ideal for live situations. Literally called Ableton Live. I was like, okay. So that's kind of like where my story started with like Ableton, and like around roughly 2012. And I will like condense this story, because the story is so long, into a shorter version of it. But essentially, I want to say like 4 years ago, about like 4 or 5 years ago, I was working this like 9-to-5 job in IT, and I was just like, I cannot do this anymore. I just quit my job without anything lined up, just took some unemployment money out from a prior job, and was like, I'm going to teach Ableton Live. That's what I want to do with my life.
Wow.
And I, mind you that, I'd been using Ableton probably for like 4 years at this point, 3 or 4 years. But like, I feel like most people know how to use like 15, 20%. There's like, honestly, there's so much under the hood. Right. And I feel like with like,
dude, I still haven't mastered Ableton. I've been using it for 2 years. So
yeah, there's literally just so much under the hood, and it's just an incredible DAW. And so, I quit my job, decided I want to teach Ableton Live, and probably knew like 15 to 20% at the time, and just kind of dedicated myself to learning it. I, was on unemployment. So, was basically every single day would read through a chapter of the manual, which is, by the way, like incredibly written. It's such a good read. Highly recommend it to anyone that uses Live. I would just like watch videos, and I just like schooled myself basically for like maybe like a year on really just like learning everything about Live. And then I essentially started teaching at this girls' rock camp, spearheaded their music production program. And then like a year and a half later, a year later, I got hired by IO Music Academy, which is a school based in Hollywood. And honestly, like teaching sound design and teaching music production changed my life, because I basically feel like I went from like kind of like a beginner to intermediate producer to like more like advanced producer, especially like just like learning the ins and outs of the job, because anytime you teach something, you really have to learn everything, because
and you learn also by teaching too.
You learn by teaching, right? If someone asks you a question, you're like, honestly, you're stumping me right now, but I feel like I have to know the answer because you are paying me. So yeah, you really just kind of like learn on the fly, and you also just become obsessive about like finding information. So I think that really kind of leveled me up as a producer. And also like when you're teaching people how to be like a consistent artist, right? Where you're just like consistently creating and just like being creative, you kind of have to lead by example, right? So if you're not doing that, then it's like you feel like a fraud. So I feel like teaching has really affected myself as an artist. But yeah, anyways, I partnered up or found my way to LPGOB, who's the co-founder of Femme House, a few years ago. And this whole experience of just like teaching for them and just like how much Femme House has grown within the past few years has also kind of blown up my career in a sense. Like it's just like led to so many cool opportunities, not even through teaching. Like I've partnered with Moog, I've partnered with Ableton, but has led to some like just incredible, just like gig opportunities. We went on our first tour, in this spring, 2021, what year is it? 2022.
You have no what year it is. You're so busy.
2022. But yeah, I feel really just so grateful, and I'm really excited to see it continuously grow.
Yeah, you sing in the Hollywood Pride Parade.
That was so exciting.
That must have been that must have been special, right?
It was so special. I think, well, first of all, like I came out, I'm a late bloomer. I really came out only a few years ago. And yeah, if you had told me like 5 years ago that I would be singing on main stage at Pride, I would have been like, what? You are full of it. But yeah, it was probably, one of the largest crowds I've performed in front of so far. And it was, such a rush, and definitely like one of my most memorable gigs to date. It was such a fun time.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, so it definitely seems to me that you love teaching. Mm-hmm. That's something that you are really big into. You get a joy out of that. Do you like teaching as much as performing, or?
Honestly, that's such an interesting question, because I mean,
you don't have to choose.
No, of course not. So one of the reasons why I love teaching, I think what I'm really passionate about is building community and just sharing knowledge that I've learned along the way. Because I really just strongly believe that knowledge should be accessible. I feel like when I first started getting into this kind of stuff, like information knowledge was not as accessible, and I feel like a lot of producers, some are like that to some extent, are like, I don't want to share my secrets. You know what I mean?
Oh man, if you were coming up during the time I was, like, at 2002, or like that's when I started. Yeah. Oh yeah, like I started producing in 2000. It was very, very gatekeepery. So I mean, it was extremely gatekeepery. People wouldn't share anything with you.
And I just where I've gotten to this point in my career, I would have not been able to get here without community, without people like uplifting me. And for me, doing that, for other people and kind of just like paying it forward is by sharing knowledge and like uplifting community in that way. So, but yeah, as far as like the education versus artist thing, like I don't think, it's not so binary for me, but I have been wanting to kind of put more of a focus on my artist career, particularly like this year. It is difficult when most of your income is from education. So I think that's kind of like what I'm trying to figure out. But I mean, I think in any industry that you're in, I mean, particularly if you're a freelancer, just like navigating time management is always going to be, a struggle and just something to kind of like tweak literally every week.
Yeah. Any chance we're going to get a new Mini Bear single? Because the last one you came out with was almost 4 years ago, right?
I know. I actually have a ton of new music that I've been working on the past few years. So I have like 3 songs actually that are in a folder right now that I upload. I bounce out the stems. I feel like once you do that, you're like, oh, that feels so good. That are ready to be mixed. So, but yeah, and then I have like a few other songs that I'm working on right now. My sound and just like, I think particular like aesthetic and just like general vibe has been shifting a little bit since I've been DJing more. I've been wanting to make music, basically make what I want to play, what I want to DJ. And, a lot of what I've been DJing is, more dance oriented and just, I love the intersection of dance music and pop. So that's, I've been working on creating more like newer songs that essentially like reflect where I'm like currently at. So, but yeah, I'm shooting for, because it's like already August, maybe like early next year. But yeah, I've got a ton of new music that I've been working on.
Yeah, because the Cyber Love single, the one that came out in 2018, it's very 80s inspired.
Yeah.
Definitely a vibe, but you're going more in like the modern dance direction. Is that kind
of like there's still, I feel like no matter what I do, every time I play a song for someone, even if it's like more housey or whatever,
well,
like,
I mean, I'm looking here in your lovely studio and it's like some very cool 80s synths and like the Juno. Yeah, the Juno 106, is that what it is?
It's like a kind of like a broken Juno 106 right now, but yes. Yeah, I mean, I think like songs that I'll play, no matter like what, genre it's in, blend of genres, whatever, I usually get feedback like, ooh, that sounds like kind of 80s. So I think no matter what I do, I think because I do have a love for, I think, synth sounds from that era, there's going to be like 80s and 90s kind of like nostalgia kind of like spreckled in through whatever I like put out. But I am kind of going for more of like a dance vibe, like dance music vibe versus like, I don't know, BPM of like 110, like mid-tempo pop music. Trying to crank up that BPM.
And you're originally from LA, right? Mm-hmm. You were born and raised in LA?
I was. I technically grew up in the Valley, but kind of like lived around LA, and kind of grew up in a really exciting time because it was like 99, 2000, where I was a raver, Candy Kid raver. So that was, to be real, that was like the golden age of raving. Or one of the golden eras of raving. So it's kind of cool to kind of come full circle because I feel like I really fell in love with dance music at that time, fell in love with like 90s funky house, soulful house, happy hardcore, which I guess is like more like gabber now maybe, and kind of like come full circle with that kind of music because I just, have been falling in love with dance music again ever since I really started getting into DJing.
Wow. So before we wrap up, can you tell us about any future gigs that you're going to be doing that you want to kind of plug or anything that you might as well like plug your Twitch stream because you are on Twitch as well, right?
Yeah. I literally just played so many gigs in the past like month and a half. I'm a little bit tired. So no, beyond like corporate gigs that sadly are private events that no one can go to. I don't have any IRL gigs right now in the books, but yeah, I am on Twitch. I stream several times a week, right now my schedule is like Monday, Thursday evenings, and then Friday late afternoon Pacific Standard Time. My handle is Mini Bear Music. So
yep, it'll be in the description below on YouTube.
Yeah, but yeah, follow me on Twitch. I do predominantly DJ streams, but also occasionally I'll do production streams. Recently just did a Sims 4 gaming stream, which was kind of fun.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully more IRL gigs in the future. But for now, you can find me on Twitch.
Awesome. Well, Mini Bear, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on my show.